So today I have an amazing guest who has been doing some very, very interesting work with the help of his son. And he is an author. And well, I'm just going to say I want to welcome Matthew McKay. Thanks for joining me today.
I'm glad to be with you.
Okay, I didn't even think to ask. Do you want me to call you Dr. McKay?
Matt is fine.
Okay, Matt. So the book is called, I'm just going to show you if you're watching this, The Luminous Landscape of the Afterlife. And so Matthew, if you wouldn't mind just explaining a little bit to people before we dive into the actual meat of this particular book, what prompted you to write this book?
Well, the book is a product of channeled communication from my son who's on the other side. 13 years ago, he was on his way home from work and riding his bike, and some men accosted him, probably to try to get the bike. There was a tremendous fight, battle. He broke away. One of them shot him in the back and he died on the street. And as I imagine most parents who've lost a child could imagine and understand, the deepest need I had was to know whether his soul still exists and is he okay where he is. So I set out to search for him. And I went through lots and lots of different processes. I consulted mediums. I went to see Alan Botkin, who developed something called induced after-death communication. That is a very powerful technique based on EMDR, eye movement to sense.
Oh, yes, I've heard of that.
And I did have the experience about 9 months after Jordan's death of hearing his voice very clearly, telling me things that I really needed to know. And as is often the case with induced after-death communication, I felt this great relief and really lightening of the grief. But I still wanted to have a conversation with Jordan. I wanted to ask questions and hear from him about his experience and what it's like where he is. And I wanted, in the same way that we used to sit in the kitchen and talk about things, I wanted to really, I knew he existed. He told me he was okay, but I wanted to really talk to him. So I consulted the late Ralph Metzner, who is a specialist in after-death communication. He taught me how to do channel writing, which I will say to your audience that anyone can learn how to do. He taught me some basic steps to the process. I went home that night and I had my first channeled communication, my first channeled conversation with Jordan. And that was the beginning of this extraordinary experience of having this very deep relationship with him that continues in love, but not just the love continues, but our actual working together continues. We have a project, we have projects together. We engage in and we set goals and move toward them. And a number of years ago, he said to me that he felt like he wanted to do a book with my help that would reach people who are afraid of death and who would help people with, which is almost ubiquitous fear and among humans, the fear of dying, transitioning. And also he wanted to have part of that book is to really explain what the afterlife is like, what to expect, that it's nothing to be afraid of. It's something to look forward to, actually. And also that there are ways here on earth we can prepare for that afterlife.
Oh, hey, that's exciting to me.
So that was that in the space of about 5 minutes, he outlined the whole book. And then over a year and a half or so, we worked through it. I'm basically the scribe. He's telling me truths and things, understandings that I could never have, but I'm dutifully writing them down. And those are the things that are in the luminous landscape of the afterlife.
So it's interesting. I have a couple of questions for you, Matthew. But first, I just want to affirm that as I was perusing this book, a lot of the information that you and Jordan have put forward, to me, A, makes perfect sense, and B, affirms reincarnation. And the reason why I wanted to bring that up at the top of the show is because I often talk about that, and there's lots of belief systems out there that are very afraid of saying that perhaps we do have other lifetimes besides this one. Why they're afraid of saying that, I'm not really sure. But to me, it gives me hope that as I'm learning and growing in this particular lifetime, I know that there will be an opportunity for more growth. And I'm also culminating or completing growth that started centuries, eons ago, because our soul is eternal. And that's basically what you guys are talking about in this book.
That's so exactly right. You know, and one of the things that Jordan says a lot is that we have to get clear the purpose of coming to Earth. Why do we come here to begin with? And once we understand that, it really reincarnation makes a lot of sense. The reason we come to Earth is to learn, to evolve, and to grow as souls, and then to take all of what we've learned as individual souls, and we give that to collective consciousness, God, source, whatever we want. So everything we learn actually helps God evolve.
Huh.
And we have a sacred mission. We come here to learn how to love in the face of pain. We come to a physical world to experience difficulty and struggle. And instead of this pain being something wrong with us or something to feel bad about, the pain is an opportunity to learn. And every opportunity to learn is something that deepens our awareness, our wisdom, and helps us evolve and grow. So that's why we come here. And so the purpose of life is not to prove worthy of going to heaven or to be saved, and or conversely to have failed and go to hell and be damned. So we're not here to be judged. We're not here to earn a place in the afterlife. We are here just to learn, to grow and evolve, so that God can grow and evolve.
So this again makes so much sense to me, and I've talked about this on my show, because I really have the belief system that the individuals that are currently on planet Earth have incarnated from a much larger, unexplainable, unnameable, and some people like to call it God thing, as sparks. And so we're all unique individual sparks that move from that oneness into an individuated compactness, of matter, so we can learn and grow in love. This is that's the key component that most current, I'm going to say it, Matthew, Christian and Judaic religions forget about, is that it's about growing in love, and not for, like you said, no judgment, no damnation, no hellfire and brimstone. That's a man-made concept someone created many years ago, centuries ago, in order to, this is my opinion, in order to control the masses. And in reality, what you're saying, and Jordan is explaining in your book, The Luminous Landscape of the Afterlife, is that it is so much more beyond what human beings have been experiencing on the planet. So,
could I just interject that?
Yeah.
We need lots of lifetimes to do this learning. Think how unfair it is if we have one lifetime and we kind of mess it up. We struggle with addiction, or we have we we hurt others in ways that are profound and difficult. And so we learn a lot from those experiences, and it's not good or bad, those experiences. Those are things that we learn from and we take into the next life. And each life we have a lesson plan, and whatever was not learned in the last life, the lessons that were not completed, will move over into the succeeding life, and we continue to work on those lessons. And we need a lot of lives,
To do
many
that.
hundreds of lives, to learn and evolve and grow in ways that, of course, then we take back to be shared with all. So it really is, and because so how unfair would it be if you had one life and it was kind of messed up, and that's it, and you, or think of all the people that are in bodies that are defective in some way, a body that doesn't work very well, this tremendous illness, or that people are just basically helpless because their body or mind doesn't work very well. How unfair would that be? But yet that life could have a lot of learning, a tremendous amount of growth could be achieved in that life and carried on into the next life. So yes, reincarnation is extraordinarily important part of the plan for each of our souls.
For human growth, and not just but soul growth. Okay. And then so I got 500 questions right now with just what you said, Matthew. So because I get a lot of questions from people of why would God allow, you brought up people being born defective, with illnesses or physical disablement or whatever. And I have people come to me and say, why would God allow that? And this is the old biblical idea of God, right? A man that's telling everybody what to do. And so why is that, Matthew? Are we at choice when we come into our life?
We have some choice. Jordan says that we're often frequently given 3 or 4 choices of different bodies, different families, different environments, in which we have an opportunity to learn, and souls often choose lives that are very challenging because souls are very driven to learn and grow. This is the most important thing. This is our mission. We exist to learn and evolve. And so, of course, if that's our mission, then we're often drawn to lives and bodies and circumstances, families, where a lot of challenges exist. They could be physical challenges, could be psychological, emotional challenges. They could be environmental challenges. We're born into an era of great conflict and war and stroke. But souls actually, to some extent, make certain choices, and they have a range of choices from fairly difficult and challenging lives to less so, lives that they'll learn a lot, or lives that they may learn but not in quite the same way if they had the larger and more intense challenges. So that's why we come here, and we actually choose some of these very difficult lives because they offer us great learning.
So if I could just, and I hope this isn't painful, but so like in Jordan's case, right? And he died at a very young age. He died a kind of violent death. And so then people would want to say, well, was that his choice? And did the perpetrators that caused the death of your son, Jordan, were they also at choice to say, yeah, I'll go help this soul do that, learn that?
Well, the man who shot Jordan says they had karmic issues from a previous life, and that got played out in this particular life. Jordan was very clear that he expected to have a short life, and that the work that he needed to do in this life, he was able to do. He did what he came here to accomplish. There were certain things he came to learn. Some of what he was coming here to do was to heal from a previous life, which had been pretty hard. And so, but what he was working on willpower here. He came here to really work on strengthening willpower, which he would need, and he's now in another life. He's already incarnated in another life, and this other life, he was going to need intense willpower in order to do some of the things that were set up for him to do. So yes, there's a big plan here. Each of our lives is these lessons are planned out. Of course, we have free will, and all of these challenges and circumstances that we face, we have choices about how we face them and how do we respond to that. And we learn from all those choices. Whether we make good choices or bad choices, we learn from them and take those lessons with us into the afterlife. So it's a very, I think of it as a sacred process, coming here to face all of these challenges and frankly, all of this pain. This is a very difficult planet. My understanding is that, as in general, incarnating souls regard Earth as a pretty difficult place to go. And there are other planets and environments that are much less challenging.
I would agree with all those souls, man.
It's a tough place. And the souls that come here they know they're in for something, and they expect to be challenged. And as they're challenged, they also expect and in fact learn an awful lot in each lifetime.
Mm-hmm. So does there ever become a culmination of all the lifetimes and then you don't have to come to planet Earth and do the hard stuff?
Well, my understanding is that souls reach a certain point, and each individual soul reaches a certain point where they're sort of saturated with the experience of incarnating. They no longer want to incarnate. They no longer want to go back to face the rigors of a physical world. And also, they're moving on from the lessons that are learned in a physical world to lessons that are primarily available to them in the spirit world. So, for example, most souls at some point begin to develop spiritual careers, meaning they're learning to be healers, learning to be guides, teachers, creators, and so there are a myriad of spiritual careers. There are many kinds of guides, for example. There are guides that primarily help souls in the afterlife. There are guides that primarily help souls with the transition between life and the spirit world. There are guides that are primarily engaged in healing process. I mean, there's all kinds of spiritual careers. So we move from the incarnational process and these cycles of going in and out of a physical world into a period where we are learning primarily to deepen our knowledge of our spiritual career and our spiritual career skills.
And this is all done on the unseen side, on where everybody passes into.
A lot of souls are starting to work on their spiritual career in between lives, but at a certain point, they stop incarnating, and now their primary focus is their spiritual career and the learning that supports that spiritual career.
Oh, wow. Oh, that sounds interesting to me. I can't wait to do that part.
You may already be doing it between lives.
I have a feeling. So let's talk about when Jordan arrived on the other side, right? And there was a small, he called it the landing place or something like that. And that was a place where these spiritual guides, career guides, probably came to help him acclimate to an awareness that he was now no longer in body. Yeah.
So the landing place is a really important. It's an anteroom to the spirit world. It's
not purgatory. It's not purgatory.
It's just adjacent to the spirit world, and it's where we go to get used to not being embodied. And we're provided an environment that's created. It's not a physical environment. It's created with energy forms that is soothing. The problem is that all communication in the spirit world is through the medium of love. In the same way we communicate through air and by making molecules of air vibrate, we communicate through love in the spirit world. That is the medium of all communication. So souls that arrive in the spirit world full of intense emotions from their immediate death, or residuals from a very difficult life, anger, shame, hurt, fear. Those emotions have to be processed before they move into the spirit world proper. And so the landing place, a lot of that has to be sorted out. The other thing is there are certain, if you arrive in the landing place with certain intense emotions, and you don't feel much love, you're not in touch with love, you don't have much love inside of you, you're deaf. And Jordan says this, DOA, you're deaf on arrival in the spirit world. And so you actually have to stay for a while in the areas adjacent to the spirit world called bardos, where more healing is done, so that you can finally enter the spirit world healed from some of this painful energy, these intense emotions. So the landing place is initially, there are souls that may spend a very short time there before they move into the spirit world. And Jordan, in fact, didn't spend a whole long time in the landing place. But one of the problems with the landing place is whatever's in your mind, you hallucinate, and you can see whatever is there. So if you expect the devil and fire and brimstone, oftentimes you're going to literally hallucinate that and scare the heck out of yourself. And Jordan was whatever he was thinking about, that's what he saw. If he thought about his apartment, and he would see his apartment. If he thought about a particular place on Earth, he would see that place. He started trying to calm himself by imagining Yosemite Valley, which he loves a lot. But then somehow the idea of an elephant entered his mind. Now he saw an elephant tromping around Yosemite Valley. Then he had this idea about, maybe, some kind of Godzilla type monster. And he saw them. And so whatever entered his mind, he literally would create energy forms and visualize or hallucinate those things. And this is what happens to people. So one of the ways we have to prepare for getting into the landing place is to be able to listen to love, expect love, bring love with you, bring love in your heart, expect to see loved ones, and be ready to hear and communicate via the medium of love.
So I'm just curious, because if people have had several incarnations where that love factor hasn't really anchored in, because I kind of feel there are some people that keep incarnating and they still haven't gotten a clue that really love is the answer, but love is the medium. It is the energy system that even if we're in body or not, what happens to them?
They may have to stay for a while in the landing place or in adjacent areas, like there's a healing area where souls are actually appearing to sleep, and meanwhile guides are injecting dreams and positive energy into them to help remodel some of the damaged soul energy that
they've been carrying
from their last life. In some cases, they go to bardos where they live out elaborate plots and narratives that help them slowly get ready to enter the spirit world. So sometimes there's a lot of work to do to get them to the point where they can kind of experience love. The other thing is our memory of our life between lives, our soul memory returns to us gradually. It's not like you die, you get to the landing place, and you remember all your past lives, and everything is clear to you, and all the lessons of your life in your life on Earth, your life between lives, all that is suddenly there. No, it actually is slowly kind of drops into place. It's sort of like an amnesiac slowly recovering your memory. And so in the landing place, that's often happening. And it may even continue for a while once we get into the spirit world. And so again, there's a lot of, there are moments in the landing place where we are confused, where we don't remember, we don't know where we are. And it takes a while to get oriented enough to finally, move into the spirit world proper.
Okay, so Matthew, then I have my next question is the landing place where you begin to do a life review of, okay, I set these goals, I hit those goals, I missed that goal. Does that happen when you get to the spirit world?
No, life review actually starts when you get into the spirit world. And
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting because near-death experience folks often do report some measure of life review before they're kind of snatched back into their body. And the life review, though, actually happens after you've moved into spirit world proper. You've left the landing place. You are now ready to be part of the spiritual community. The life review is this, to me, it's fascinating because it's an experience in which you remember, of course, everything that happened in your life, but mostly you're looking at it in terms of decisions, your behavior, things you did or didn't do. But you're not only experiencing it as a memory, but you're experiencing it as everyone around you experienced it, how they were affected emotionally,
Oh.
how it impacted them, not only at the moment that you made that choice or engaged in that action, but into the future as well. So as you're doing your life review, you're experiencing the impact on everyone around you as you did whatever you did, and how that impact plays out over time for those individuals. And for example, let's say a father slaps his son, and in life review, he would actually experience that slap emotionally as his son experienced it. He would experience the sharp rejection
Mm-hmm.
of that slap, but
Mm-hmm.
he would also experience it as how that slap reverberated in the future of the son's life, how that slap made him changed how he felt about himself over time, and his pain and sense of defectiveness, that something was wrong with him, that his dad conveyed to him with that slap. So the experience is that moment from the other person's point of view, but also over time how that played out for them.
I think that's amazing. It's kind of, again, if we could feel that here while we're still in our body, it would shift a lot of how we react and interact with each other, because we would get, that's the whole, I mean, to me, it's the whole thing about being the observer that everybody's talking about. And the thing about the detached compassion, right? You get to zoom out and watch what your action is multiplying down the line. And if we could do that now, wow, I mean, it would just change the whole humanity and all the mishigosh that's going on right now, I think.
It's true. We do have some natural compassion for capacity for empathy and compassion. But what happens is people who are very self-focused, they only care about their, getting their own needs met, providing for themselves in some way. They're not very connected to others. They actually mute that. They mute that awareness of other people's pain. They mute compassion. They mute empathy, so that they can act without awareness of the pain they cause. So we actually, see that. I mean, and that's a choice that people make.
Oh, good God. Oh, good God. If anybody's listening to this podcast and you are choosing to mute that so you can continue to just get what you want, please, please, please take a moment and reflect on what your action creates. Because Matthew just hit one of my personal triggers. So, wow. Okay. I'm getting off my soapbox. So, so then once you get to this, the thing that I found interesting, hold on, if I want to see if I can just pull this out of the book. Because in the book you talk about there's time and the elasticity of time, the matrix of cause and effect. But let me just see if it's right here. Okay, this is about consciousness. And you and Jordan said, consciousness is energy, and thought, a directed form of consciousness, is energy. Consciousness through directed thought turns energy into material dimensions with unique laws and forms. Consciousness creates these material dimensions, universes, to play with and learn from. And we, small fragments of collective consciousness, are learning machines that enter the universe to discover everything it has to teach us. That right there, that I could chew on for an entire day, because we are all energy. We are all consciousness. And again, I just have to go back to, if you're muting your consciousness, get off of it, unmute. Because, you know, the whole big thing now in self-transformation is about your thoughts create your reality and all of that. It's true. So when you're in the spirit world, you're still, like you were talking about hallucinating in the landing place. When you're in the spirit world, are you still co-creating?
Yeah, you can. And a lot of, for example, Jordan and his soul group, they have co-created a kind of an old Victorian style farmhouse. Mm-hmm. And they've created that out of energy. It doesn't exist in a material sense, but you know, they have collectively as a group embellished on this house, and because it's pleasing to them. And they've had many environments that they've created over many eons, and so they create an environment that's comforting to them or feels pleasant. And it exists in the sense that it is a field of energy, but it doesn't exist in the sense that, you know, knocking on this wall back here exists. Although, frankly, the wall is just energy.
Right.
And all of what Jordan says and what you were reading is that all of material existence and all the energy and the matter in the universe is a product of thought. It's a product of the thought of all of collective consciousness or God or however we want to label it. And this is just one of many universes that collective consciousness has created. And when it's learned everything it can from this one, it'll create another one that's more evolved still. And that's the other point, is that, you know, the Christian idea of God is that God is perfect and God is all powerful. Actually, collective consciousness is not perfect. It will never be perfect. It's going to continue to grow and evolve, just like we're continuing to eternally grow and evolve. And one of the ways that it evolves is to create universes in which to learn
and to expand it, to explore itself.
It's kind of like this is an example or an analogy Jordan makes. It's like a dad who makes a doll or a playhouse for his kid. Well, he's too big to get into that playhouse, but his kid can go in there and have this experience inside this playhouse and learn all kinds of things and have all kinds of experiences and fun and engagement with that environment that the dad can't fit in. Well, it's sort of like that for a collective consciousness. It makes a universe, and into that universe goes individual souls to experience it on a micro level, and to learn as much as possible from that universe.
So explain to everybody what a soul group is.
So Jordan tells me the soul group is made up of maybe 8 to 20 souls, and from the very beginning of their existence, they've been arranged in a group, and the soul group learns together in the afterlife, and in the spirit world, they're learning from guys, and they're like really do a lot of classroom work. It's like going to college. There's a lot of direct experiential learning that goes on with the help of guides inside the soul group. But the soul group also typically incarnates together, and they made them incarnate dozens and hundreds of times together into different eras of history, different environments, and obviously different bodies, different families. But they tend to incarnate in the same geographical area and in general time frame, because the plan is that they will all be interacting with each other in some way and learning from each other. So it's like a little repertory company, a theater company that keeps going back for another play and another play and another play. But in each play, they have different relationships. In one pair, maybe husband and wife. Jordan and I were, he was female, and we were husband and wife in another life. They may be a teacher pupil, and in another life, Jordan was an old rabbi, and I was a young rabbi in a yeshiva and I was learning from him. They may be adversaries in certain lives. Brother and sister, brief lovers. I mean, so in our soul group, each incarnation, we're going to have very different relationships, and sometimes we repeat those relationships. Souls will, be lovers over multiple lives, but still, each life is offering different challenges, and the soul group comes together in a new play to experience each other and learn in new ways.
Okay. I so appreciate that explanation. I have a couple questions, Matthew. So Jordan passed on and you're still here, but you're part of the same soul group.
Yeah, we're adjacent. My understanding is, like you could think of soul groups as like living in houses, and so we're probably next door in the next door soul group, and then of course, the universe of spirit is vast, and there are countless souls that make it up, and they incarnate to many different planets. So we obviously don't know everybody. We know our soul group very well. Some of the adjacent soul groups will be incarnating with members of those adjacent groups. Sometimes we come to Earth and form deep relationships with soul groups that are nowhere near us. And so when we get in the afterlife, we actually go and visit those souls and have connections with them as well. And so we build that. It's sort of like having a dear friend you grew up with, and they moved to Japan.
Right.
Well, you still love them, and you still care for them, and periodically you take a trip over to Japan to see them, and it's kind of like that. So we come to Earth, and sometimes we form these deep relationships with souls who are not at all adjacent to us, and who we continue to love forever.
Okay, what about the people that we don't want to continue to love forever?
It turns out that's not a choice.
Oh, crap.
Yeah, it turns out, because we can incarnate. I have somebody in my soul group who right now in this life is a real thorn in my side. But the truth is, and I'm going to, at some point go back to the soul group. He'll be there. We will love each other. We've had this life, and we've lived this experience, and we will learn from it.
I'm making a face, Matthew, because if I never see my ex,
there's a few people you'd like to be rid of. You'd like to be totally rid of.
I have actually invoked it. I said, that's it, never again, because we've been around the merry-go-round of lives several times, So I think I'm going to be in that landing place for a while.
Well, I have several ex-lovers in my soul group, and so once you've connected to someone, once you've loved them at all, ever, that lasts forever.
Even if they're a narcissist?
Well, of course, that's their personality here.
Cut the cord. Cut.
See, we're confusing the personality of that we get when we go into a body with our soul essence, and they're not quite the same things. A certain amount, souls have personalities too, but a certain amount of that personality does kind of show up in how they manifest in a physical world. But a lot of how we manifest is really because of the body we're in, and its nervous system and its limbic system, and how emotional it is. And the other thing that happens is, just while we're talking about this, so relatively younger souls who've not been incarnating much, they get into these bodies, and the body starts running the show. The body's full of desires, and very, very self-focused, and the body's demanding all this stuff. So the body's having emotional reactions, and the soul is not very good at managing that, because these bodies that we live in are very reactive.
Yes.
And so young souls who are early in their incarnational careers oftentimes get into the body, and the body just runs the show, and that whole life is just experiencing being out of control. And so,
And
of course, we meet these souls, and we come in contact with them, and they do painful things, and we don't like it. But when we get into the afterlife, all that sort of, it's not forgotten, but it's just seen in context. Oh, that was just what happened in that life. That's not that soul. That's not who the soul is. That was a soul wrestling with a body that was uh, full of emotions and impulses and desires.
oh dear, I'm in big trouble, Matthew, when I cross over. Holy moly. Oh. So let's go. I want to speak a bit about the concept of a young soul versus an old soul. Because in my line of work, a lot of people like to say I'm an old soul, and I'm like, yeah, except that the fact that you have to say that kind of says to me that you kind of aren't. So where do new souls, like, is there, this is, I don't mean to be irreverent, Matthew, but if there is only one big, huge consciousness, collective consciousness, and we're continually incarnating until we decide we're just going to move on into a spiritual career, where do the new souls come from?
They're being created all the time.
In this particular universe, or are they coming from other universes and dropping and going, okay, now I'm going to do planet Earth for a while? Kind of like going to the different lands at Disneyland.
Well, souls tend to incarnate in the planet they started in. In other words,
Okay.
there are a lot of planets and environments, and some of them are not even physical environments. Some of them are just dimensional experiences where souls incarnate and they go to learn. Now, souls tend to stay in the same planet because they're used to that environment. It's familiar to them, and they want to go back to what's familiar. They learned a lot about that planet. They learned a lot about those particular creatures, those bodies that they incarnate in, and they want to take that knowledge into the next life. But their souls are being created all the time. I mean, think of this. How many souls do we have on this earth now? 7 billion or something. I'm a little. I'm not keeping up with the.
Well, quite a few left last year, but
yeah, well, that's true.
Yeah.
But we have a lot, and think of it. We started with a few bands of souls were incarnating in a few bands of communities in Africa, and from that we have 7 billion, and in planets all over the place. There's increasing populations, and souls are being created to enter various bodies in various planets where they are going to be learning. So that souls are being created all the time. And so a lot of the souls that come to Earth are very young. They've only had a few incarnations. They're just starting out. And so they're still trying to manage and figure out how to handle this very wayward body that we work with and we have to live inside of. And these difficult communities that are full of struggle and sometimes violence and selfishness. I mean, we're really having to navigate a lot here. And so young souls are really challenged by this. It's really tough. And older souls have more experience and more wisdom, and they take some of that with them when they incarnate. We still forget all our past lives. We come here with amnesia, but we do have some residual wisdom and knowledge that we do take with us from these past lives. And so as we grow in knowledge and we have many incarnations, we actually tend to make better decisions and have lives that work better.
I would agree with you on that. I would totally agree with you on that. And it feels like for me and the people I hang with I'm having this conversation all the time on my podcast with other guests, that the people that are incarnated now, those of us that have been around the block a few times, we were called to be here now to support the newbies, if you will, to lift up so that humanity can progress in a more loving and kind way.
Yes,
even
my
though we're not necessarily seeing that right now.
a lot of souls have parachuted in. A lot of advanced souls have parachuted in this particular era because we're in a crisis, and they
Huge.
are busy trying to turn this around.
It's a lot of work. It's and what's oh, now I'm just going to talk about me, but what's frustrating is that's why I got upset about the people that are muting their compassion and their awareness, because those of us, you included, Jordan was, that came in to help elevate awareness. It makes it even more challenging, because the newbies are not, I mean, our particular country right now is like, oh boy.
Well, and the newbies tend to be stuck in old memes like tribalism, and we see that playing out a lot. There's this strong surge of tribalism, but we are moving into another age. We're moving into an age of oneness. Now, remember that one of the things that's true is that we simultaneously are part of all,
Yes.
and are individual and separate. And that's a very weird paradox to be at once part of all and to be separate. And one of the things we are learning is to be able to recognize, even on Earth, that we're part of all, and this connection to all. And some of the newer souls have a hard time with that, and are just kind of stuck in tribalism and selfishness. But souls who've been around, who've had multiple lives, who've grown a little bit and evolved a little bit, are often able to feel that deep sense of connection. And it's really the source and basis of spirituality, is just sensing and feeling that connection.
Yes, I totally agree. And when you are sensing and feeling that connection, there is a feeling of expansion, open-heartedness, open awareness. You become even more, it's almost like there's a 360 viewpoint, even though you're in this little human body.
Yeah, and there's a sense of trust, because we're actually attuned to love, and because really being attuned to all and feeling that deep connection to all is really just being aware of love. And love is the gravity that holds everything together. It's the force that holds everything together. And just feeling and noticing and observing that is really important. And as souls mature, we grow in awareness of that, and it's easier for us to tap into that sense of connection, which is drawn from this very powerful force of love. Well, I guess one of the things I wanted to just say in relationship to that is that Jordan has some very, I think, kind of the core of his message is that we're always together, the living and the dead. And that's what I said earlier. Anybody you've loved, you're always going to love them. You may not know it, you may not feel it now, but love is eternal. Once love exists between souls, it will always be so. It will always be there. We can't lose each other. And we may reject each other here. We may, fall apart. We may lose each other in death or disability or disease. And yet the love is eternal. And so the love between the living and the dead, that connection is always there. Nothing ever can take it away or change it. And that we're always part of the whole. Mm-hmm. Whether we are aware of it or not, we remain always part of the whole, always connected and united in love. We're always united in love. That to me is the kind of the thing that is maybe the most reassuring thing that Jordan says. And the other thing about death, he says, look, he says, trust. You will be received. You will be cared for. You will be loved on the other side. That's absolute truth. And it may take you a little bit in the landing place to kind of recognize and tune in and listen to love, and remember who you are, but you will. And all around you are people who love you, souls that are entities that love you, who are there to support you. And so those are the things that he's trying to convey, that absolute eternal connectedness between all of us. Once we love, we will always love.
So my last question for you, Matthew, then is, we come here to learn to love.
We have individual lessons. So Jordan, for example, was working on willpower and actually increasing his ability to act with intention. And so that was an individual lesson plan. And we all have things that we're working on. Some souls come here learning to create boundaries and learning to do better self-care.
And that sounds like me.
Yeah, so we have individual lessons plans, but the overarching process and reason we come here is to learn how to love in the face of pain, because in the spirit world, love is the natural state. There's no obstacles to love. Each individual spirit, we're transparent to each other. We can see exactly who that other soul is. We see that soul. We know that soul. We accept that soul. We love that soul. And that's such a beautiful experience in the afterlife, where to be seen, known, and loved at the same time is just a very profound and deep and joyous feeling. Here, we're not very transparent to each other. We're hidden. In fact, we actually actively try to hide ourselves because we're afraid of rejection. And so we're careful, we're hidden. And love is hard here because, this is a silly example. A parent comes home from a hard day of work when they just had, some sort of crisis. They're frazzled, they're out of mind, and their kid needs help with homework. Or the kid is just grumpy and so upset about something. And it takes so much work and energy to kind of push past the tiredness, one's own emotional stress, to say, to reach that child and let me be there let me love you in the way you need to be loved right now. Let me help you with your homework. Let me hear your distress. Let me soothe you. That's just a silly example. But another example is like husband and wife or partners, and one of them criticizes the other.
Yeah.
So now the criticized partner feels hurt. It's really hard to love when you're hurt. And these are just silly little examples of there's so much friction here. There's so many obstacles and barriers to love, and there's so much pain that gets in the way of love. And we have to learn to navigate all that. And it's exactly why we're here, because that pain doesn't exist in the afterlife.
Thank God. Thank God.
We need to rest when we get up there. Because
exactly. Oh my goodness. Thank God. Yeah.
Yes. Thank God.
So, and my prayer has been for forever, I think, that that love is the overarching thing, and that as we grow as humanity, we all learn to embody that love, not just give love so I can get something, but really embody it and be it, because that's what's going to heal the divide, right?
That seems deeply true to me, what you just said, Susan. It seems deeply true to me, and it fits exactly with what Jordan tells me. That's why we're here. We're learning how to get deeper and deeper and deeper into love in the face of all these obstacles.
And I know in my personal experience, the more I love, the more it feels like heartbreak. And yet what it is heart opening into more love and more radiance in how I choose to show up. And it's just, so many, I have clients that come in there, they've been wounded and hurt, and they're afraid to love again. Oh, I don't want another relationship, whatever. But that, if that's why we're here, is to learn to love and to grow, then you got to take the next risky thing.
To learn to love in the face of loss. in the face of impermanence, that
Yeah.
relationships end, not really, they don't really end, but they at least end in terms of our experience here. We get rejected, the relationship falls apart, someone dies. Learning how to love in the face of that loss is, and to hold love in the face of loss is one of the greatest challenges we have. What you're saying makes so much sense to me.
Oh, and I so appreciate that you said yes to this life mission, Matthew, and that you listened when Jordan was reaching out to you. I really appreciate it. So everybody, the book is called The Luminous Landscape of the Afterlife by Matthew McKay. And this should be on your shelf. It should be on your shelf. It's a really good primer before you pass away so that you know what to expect and not have fear, but trust. Matthew, thank you so much for joining me. Is there any, do you have a website that you want to just mention for people to get the other books?
And read more things that Jordan has to say. There's www.sinkingjordan.com.
Sinkingjordan.com.
You can see more of what he has to say there.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much again, Matthew. It's been a privilege. Absolutely. And I'm just going to end with, and so it is, namaste.